The soft hum of the air conditioner blended with the distant chime of the campus clock tower. I smoothed the silk sleeve of my ivory blouse, the fabric cool against my skin, before sliding my hands onto the polished mahogany table. The brass plate in front of me gleamed under the boardroom lights. Olivia Bennett, Board of Governors. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old books, a scent that carried the weight of tradition. Around me sat men and women in tailored suits, some old enough to be my parents, others seasoned scholars who had shaped the very identity of this university. I belonged here. No, I had earned my place here. But as my phone buzzed against the table, a shiver of irony slid down my spine. A message. I tilted the screen just enough to read the sender's name. Dad. I hesitated before opening it, my heart squeezing with an old, familiar ache. The same man who once said my degree was just a piece of paper had now written, "Heard you're on the university board. Is it true?" I exhaled slowly, pressing my thumb against the edge of the phone until it hurt. The silence in the boardroom stretched comfortably around me, yet inside my chest, memories pressed like bruises. They had ignored me once, ignored everything I worked for. And now they wanted confirmation of what they could no longer deny. I smiled faintly, hiding the storm that still lived inside me. The phone in my hand dragged me backward in time, to a day I had promised myself I'd never forget. It was June in Boston, the summer sun sharp and golden against the brick walls of my parents' house. I walked in with my graduation cap still tucked under my arm, my diploma carefully rolled inside its leather case. My heels clicked against a tiled floor, each step carrying the weight of 4 years of sleepless nights, research papers, and dreams that had fueled me since I was a teenager. I expected smiles, maybe even balloons, or at least my father standing up, pride shining in his eyes. Instead, I found him on the couch, the TV glowing blue across his face. My mother stirred a pot in the kitchen without looking up. "Dad," I began, my voice shaky but hopeful. "I did it. I graduated. Bachelor of Arts in Political Science with honors." He glanced at me, just once, before shifting his gaze back to the screen. "That's nice, Liv," he muttered, "but you know a degree like that won't pay the bills. Should have gone into business. Or nursing. Something useful." The words landed like a slap. My grip tightened on the diploma case, the edge biting into my palm. I turned toward my mother, desperate for rescue. She gave me a soft smile, but her sigh carried more resignation than pride. "Your father's not wrong, Olivia. It's a tough world out there. You need something practical." My throat closed. I swallowed hard, forcing back tears, my vision blurring as their indifference wrapped around me like chains. I had dreamed of this moment, dreamed they would finally see me. Instead, I felt invisible. That night, I sat outside on the porch, diploma still in my lap, when my grandmother came to join me. She was the only one who noticed I had slipped away. Wrinkles deepened around her eyes as she lowered herself into the chair beside me. She didn't ask what was wrong. She simply looked at me, then at the diploma, and finally placed a small leather notebook in my hands. Its pages were blank, except for the first line she had written in neat cursive. "Don't let them decide your worth." Her voice was firm, steady. "Olivia, this world will always tell you what you can't do. Write your own story here. Fill these pages with proof of who you are." That was the night I made a vow. If they thought my degree was worthless, I would prove its value in ways they couldn't even imagine. I kept my grandmother's notebook tucked in my bag like a secret weapon. On the nights when my hands shook from exhaustion, or when rejection emails piled up in my inbox, I'd flip it open and stare at that first line. "Don't let them decide your worth." After graduation, I moved into a cramped studio apartment near the university. The walls were thin, the radiator groaned in winter, and the ceiling leaked during spring storms. My mattress was secondhand, the kind that left springs pressing into my back. But it was mine. And more than that, it was freedom. By day, I worked as an administrative assistant in the political science department, filing papers, answering phones, smiling politely at professors who barely remembered my name. By night, I devoured research articles, drafted essays, and submitted applications for fellowships I had no guarantee of getting. Coffee became my closest companion. Chipped mugs littered my tiny desk, each one stained with ambition. It wasn't glamorous. Some nights I cried into my pillow, wondering if my parents had been right. Maybe my degree really was useless. Maybe I was chasing a dream too big for me. But then came Professor Evelyn Hart. She was a legend in the department, a woman with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for never underestimating anyone. One afternoon, she stopped by my desk. "You're Olivia, right? Weren't you the one who wrote that paper on civic engagement and grassroots reform?" I blinked, stunned she remembered. "Yes, ma'am." Her smile was faint but genuine. "It was good. Come by my office. I think I have a research project you could help with." That moment changed everything. Working with Professor Hart was like being handed a lantern in a dark cave. She challenged me, pushed me to think harder, to defend my ideas, to stop apologizing for taking up space. Under her mentorship, I co-authored my first paper. I still remember the thrill of seeing my name printed in an academic journal, small font, page 32, but it felt monumental. Then came the fellowship, a year-long program in Washington, D.C., fully funded. I lived in a dorm with other bright-eyed scholars, spending my days in libraries and government buildings, listening to policymakers debate ideas I had only read about in textbooks. It wasn't easy. I survived on instant ramen, wore the same blazer to every meeting, and fought waves of self-doubt every time I stood in a room full of experts. But every small win built into something larger. A published article, a speaking invitation, a consulting offer. And yet, through it all, I stayed quiet with my family. On social media, I posted only modest updates, excited for a new project. Busy these days. I never mentioned awards, conferences, or the checks that finally started to cover more than just rent. Because deep down, a part of me still ached from that night on the porch. I wanted them to recognize me without being told. I wanted the day to come when they'd discover the truth on their own, when my success would be too big to ignore. And that day was closer than I realized. The invitation came almost by accident, or maybe by fate. The university was hosting its annual gala, a formal evening where faculty, donors, and members of the Board of Governors gathered to celebrate achievements and unveil new initiatives. My name was printed on the program, right under the headline, "Keynote Address, Olivia Bennett, Board of Governors." Somehow, the program reached my parents. I never sent it, but a week before the gala, I got the call. My mother's voice was careful, hesitant. "Your father and we thought maybe we could attend. If it's all right with you." I hesitated, heart thudding. For years, I had hidden my milestones, waiting for the right moment. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the day I had been unconsciously preparing for all along. The night of the gala, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and polished silverware. Waiters moved between tables with trays of champagne. A string quartet played softly near the stage. I stood near the entrance, my deep emerald gown brushing the floor, nerves buzzing beneath my skin. That's when I saw them. My parents walked in, looking both out of place and slightly awed by the grandeur of it all. My father's tie was crooked. My mother's eyes darted nervously around the room. For a moment, I was 21 again, clutching my diploma and waiting for them to see me. But this time, I didn't shrink. I straightened my shoulders. When the ceremony began, I led them to their seats near the front, reserved for guests of board members. Their eyebrows rose, confusion flickering between them. Then came the introductions. Our keynote speaker this evening is one of our youngest board members in university history. A scholar, author, and advocate for educational reform. Please welcome Ms. Olivia Bennett. The applause swelled around me as I stepped onto the stage. My heels echoed against the polished floor. My eyes swept the crowd, but they stopped where they always had, on my parents. My father's mouth hung open slightly. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. Neither spoke. I delivered my speech with steady conviction. I spoke of the power of education, of resilience, of building pathways for students who were told they didn't belong. My words filled the room, but every sentence carried a silent subtext meant for them. This is what that piece of paper became. This is the worth you refuse to see. When the applause finally died down, people approached me, professors, donors, even the university president. They shook my hand, congratulated me, praised my work. And my parents watched, stunned, as one after another treated me with the respect and admiration they had once denied me. Later that night, I invited them into my office. It wasn't just a workspace, it was my sanctuary. Framed on the walls were awards and photographs. Me at conferences, me shaking hands with senators, me with students I had mentored. On the shelves sat rows of books, some with my name embossed on the spine. A crystal vase of fresh lilies sat on the desk, a quiet nod to my grandmother's favorite flower. My father walked in first, his gaze sweeping the room. His eyes landed on the nameplate on my desk. Olivia Bennett, Board of Governors. The silence stretched heavy, thick. I didn't speak right away. I let him take it in. I let the truth sink into the cracks of his disbelief. Finally, I broke the silence. My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of every sleepless night, every tear, every vow I had made. You once told me my degree was worthless, that it wouldn't lead anywhere, but it led me here. My mother's eyes glistened. My father's jaw tightened, his pride and regret colliding in a storm behind his eyes. For once, they had nothing to say. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. My parents sat across from me in my office, the glow of the desk lamp casting soft shadows over their faces. My father looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, his broad shoulders slightly hunched. My mother's hands twisted in her lap, as though she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, and let the silence hang for a moment longer. Power wasn't in raising my voice, it was in making them wait. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Olivia, I didn't know. His voice cracked, a sound I'd never heard from him before. I didn't realize what you were building. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. You didn't want to realize. You dismissed me before I even had the chance to prove myself. He looked down, shame flickering across his face. My mother whispered, "We were scared for you, Liv. We thought you'd struggle. We wanted something safe for you." I pressed my palms flat against the desk. And in trying to protect me, you crushed me. Do you know what it feels like to bring home the thing you've worked hardest for, only to have it ignored? Neither of them answered. They didn't need to. The silence told me they finally understood. I drew a slow breath and softened my tone, but not my resolve. Here's what I need from you, if we're going to move forward. Their eyes lifted, tentative. To you, Dad, I said, turning my gaze to him. Respect me, even when my choices don't look like yours. Stop measuring success only by paychecks and practicality. I need you to see that worth is more than dollars. His jaw worked as though he wanted to argue, but he stayed quiet and nodded once. To you, Mom, I continued gently. Stop silencing yourself. I've watched you sacrifice your own passions just to keep peace. You used to love painting. I still remember the canvases in the basement. I want you to pick it up again. Don't bury your dreams the way you tried to bury mine. Her lips trembled, and she covered her mouth with her hand. Tears filled her eyes. And to both of you, I said firmly, don't ever dismiss another person's dreams the way you dismissed mine. Not my siblings. Not anyone. You don't get to decide someone else's worth. The words hung in the air like a verdict. I leaned forward slightly. I care about you. I always will. But I will not bend myself into the daughter you wanted me to be. This, I gestured to the room, the awards, the position. This is who I am. And if you want to be part of my life, you need to meet me here. On my terms. For the first time, I saw my father's eyes soften, the stubborn pride giving way to something raw, almost vulnerable. My mother reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Not yet. But for the first time in years, the balance of power had shifted. And it was finally in my hands. The weeks after the gala felt different. The shift wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was quiet, like the slow bloom of spring after a long winter. My father started calling me more often. At first, the conversations were clumsy. He'd ask about my work in halting sentences, clearly unsure of how to show interest. But each call stretched a little longer, and each time, his pride was harder to hide. Once he even said, "I read your article in the Journal of Policy Reform. Didn't understand all of it, but it was impressive." My mother surprised me most. One Saturday, she sent me a photo, a canvas, half-painted, sitting on the easel in the basement. Soft brushstrokes of blue and gold filled the frame. Her message was simple: start it again. For the first time in years, her smile in the photo was real, not the tired one she wore out of habit. And me? I kept moving forward. Meetings, research projects, lectures. All the things that once felt like distant dreams now filled my daily calendar. But I also found myself pausing more often, reflecting, not just on the victories, but on the journey it had taken to get here. One evening, after a long day at the university, I pulled out the leather notebook my grandmother had given me. Its cover was worn now, edges frayed from years of being carried through airports, libraries, and late-night study sessions. The first page still carried her handwriting. "Don't let them decide your worth." But now, the rest of the pages weren't blank. They were filled with notes, ideas, sketches of speeches, names of students I had mentored, proof of a life I had built from the ground up. Proof that I had kept my promise to myself. I sat by the window, the city lights glittering outside, and closed my eyes. For years, I had carried the pain of being dismissed, of being told I was nothing. That pain had once felt like a wound. Now it felt like a scar, something permanent, yes, but no longer raw. Something that told the story of survival. I thought of the girl who once sat on her parents' porch, diploma clutched in her hands, tears stinging her eyes. I wished I could reach back and tell her, "Hold on. One day, they'll see you. One day, you'll sit at the very table they thought you'd never reach." And as I closed the notebook, I whispered softly, almost like a vow renewed. They ignored my degree once, but now it has written my name into the walls of this university. And this time, no one can erase it.